In 1958, a Rotherham housewife could feed 6 people a full Sunday roast with change from a 10-bob note. Today, we spend over £25 and half ends up in the bin. The cuts your grandmother used are still sitting in the bottom of the butcher's cabinet, ignored because supermarkets taught us to reach for the same 3 joints every week. Number 17 was the backbone of Welsh mining families and costs under £3 now. Number 7 uses a technique Michelin chefs charge £40 for. Your nan did it every Sunday without thinking, and number 1 has almost vanished from the modern table. These are 25 forgotten Sunday roasts that can feed your family for under £10. Subscribe, because this will change how you shop. Let us count them down. Number 25. Roast stuffed marrow. Before courgettes took over every supermarket shelf, the marrow was king of the British allotment. Your grandmother would halve a marrow lengthways, scoop out the seeds, and fill the cavity with a mixture of leftover mince, breadcrumbs, onion, and a beaten egg. Wrapped loosely in foil and roasted at 180 degrees for an hour, the marrow turned soft and sweet, while the stuffing firmed up inside. The whole thing cost next to nothing. A marrow from the garden was free. Half a pound of mince was about 2 shillings in 1960. Served with roast potatoes and gravy made from an OXO cube, it fed 4 or 5 without complaint. Children would fight over the crispy stuffing edges. Mothers would slice it at the table like a proper joint. The marrow held everything together, acting as both vessel and vegetable. You could use pork mince, beef mince, or even corned beef mashed with breadcrumbs. Today, a marrow costs about £1 in season, and the mince another 3. A full roast dinner for a family of 4, under £5. We forgot the marrow because supermarkets stopped stocking them in favour of their baby cousin. But any greengrocer still has them come August. Number 24. Roast belly pork with crackling. Belly pork was the cut nobody wanted, which made it the cut every smart housewife reached for. In the 1950s, a slab of belly cost about 1 shilling and 6pence a pound, less than half the price of a loin. Your grandmother would score the skin with a razor blade, rub it with salt, and roast it on a high heat for the first 20 minutes to blister the crackling. Then she would drop the temperature and let it go low and slow for 2 hours. The fat rendered down through the meat, basting it from the inside. The kitchen filled with that unmistakable smell of roasting pork and hot fat. Children hovered near the oven, waiting for the crackling to be snapped off and shared out. The meat underneath was rich, juicy, and falling apart. Served with applesauce from the tree in the garden, roast potatoes cooked in the pork dripping, and boiled cabbage. A full roast for 6 people. Today, belly pork sits in the supermarket at around £4 a kilo. A piece big enough for a family costs about £5. With potatoes and seasonal veg, you are well under 10. The secret the supermarkets do not advertise is that cheap cuts with fat on them taste better than expensive lean ones. Your grandmother knew that. The rest of us forgot. Number 23. Roast brisket. Brisket was the Sunday staple of families who could not afford sirloin but refused to go without beef on the table. A rolled brisket joint, tied tight by the butcher, was rubbed with mustard powder, salt, and pepper, then roasted slow at 150 degrees for 3 to 4 hours. The connective tissue broke down into gelatin, turning tough, cheap meat into something that melted on the fork. In 1955, brisket cost about 2 shillings a pound. Your grandmother would put it in the oven before church and come home to a house that smelled like heaven. The dripping from brisket was dark and intense, perfect for Yorkshire puddings. The leftover meat, sliced cold on Monday, went into sandwiches with piccalilli. Nothing was wasted. A 2-kilo brisket today costs around £8 from the butcher. With roast potatoes, carrots, and homemade gravy, the whole meal comes in under 10. Brisket is making a comeback in American barbecue, but the British slow-roasted version, your grandmother's version, is still the better meal. She just never gave it a fancy name. Number 22. Roast ox cheek. Before supermarkets decided we only needed 4 cuts of beef, ox cheek was the working man's roast. 2 cheeks fed a family of 5. Your grandmother would brown them hard in dripping, then braise them with onions, carrots, and a splash of stout in a covered pot for 4 hours. The meat was so tender you could cut it with a spoon. The gravy that formed around it was thick, dark, and impossibly rich. Ox cheek cost pennies in the 1950s because nobody with money wanted to eat a cow's face. That snobbery kept prices low for decades. Today, a pair of ox cheeks costs about £4 from a decent butcher. Roasted low with root vegetables and served with mash, the total meal comes in well under 10. Michelin-starred restaurants now charge £35 for braised ox cheek. Your nan served it on a Tuesday and called it tea. Number 21. Roast chicken with bread sauce. There was a time when roast chicken was the luxury, not the weeknight fallback it has become. In the early 1960s, a whole chicken cost about 7 shillings and sixpence, a serious investment. Your grandmother treated it with ceremony. She would stuff the cavity with onion and thyme, rub the skin with butter, and roast it carefully, basting every 20 minutes. But the real star was the bread sauce. Stale bread simmered in milk, with a studded onion, cloves, and a bay leaf until it turned thick and creamy. Bread sauce cost almost nothing to make and elevated the chicken into a proper occasion. Children got the drumsticks. Father carved at the table. The carcass went into the stock pot on Monday. Today, a whole chicken costs about £5. A loaf of bread, a pint of milk, and an onion bring the bread sauce in at under £1. The full roast with roast potatoes and greens is comfortably under 10. We replaced bread sauce with packet gravy and lost something irreplaceable. Number 20. Roast lamb neck. Best end of neck was the lamb joint for families who could not afford a leg. Your grandmother would buy a row of cutlets still joined, sometimes called a rack of lamb by butchers who wanted to sound fancy. But mostly she bought scrag end, the cheapest neck cut, and slow roasted it with rosemary, garlic, and root vegetables until the meat pulled clean from the bone. In the early 1950s, neck of lamb cost about 1 6 a pound. The bones gave the gravy body and richness. Served with mint sauce made from garden mint, sugar, and vinegar, and a pile of floury boiled potatoes. Children gnawed the bones clean. Mothers stretched it with extra vegetables. A full neck of lamb today costs about £5 from the butcher. With seasonal roots and potatoes, you are feeding 4 for well under the budget. Supermarkets carved lamb neck off the shelves decades ago because it does not look pretty in plastic. Your loss, not your grandmother's. Number 19. Roast stuffed heart. This is the one that makes modern cooks nervous. But in the 1950s, stuffed heart was a perfectly ordinary Sunday dinner. Lamb hearts, usually 3 or 4 of them, were cleaned, trimmed, and packed with a sage and onion stuffing. Stitched closed with kitchen string or pinned with a wooden skewer, they went into a roasting tin with dripping, onions, and a splash of water. Roasted at 170 degrees for about 90 minutes, the hearts turned tender and the stuffing soaked up all those deep mineral juices. A pound of lamb hearts cost about sixpence in 1956. Today they are about £2 a kilo if you can find a butcher who stocks them. With stuffing ingredients, roast potatoes and carrots, the entire roast comes in around £6. The taste is rich, gamey, and unlike anything you will find in a supermarket packet. Offal vanished from the British Sunday table not because it stopped being good, but because squeamishness became more powerful than thrift. Number 18. Roast hand of pork. The hand, or front leg of pork, was the joint that fed families when a proper leg was beyond reach. Smaller and cheaper, but with a higher ratio of fat to meat, which meant more flavor. Your grandmother would roast its skin on, scoring deep lines and rubbing coarse salt into every groove. 3 hours at a moderate heat, and the crackling shattered like glass while the meat inside stayed soft and moist. The hand yielded enough for 4 with plenty left for cold cuts on Monday. In the 1950s, it cost about half the price of a rear leg. Today, a hand of pork is around £4 to £5, often less from a butcher clearing stock. With roast potatoes, greens, and applesauce, the whole spread stays under 10. Supermarkets rarely stock the hand because it looks irregular on the shelf. Butchers still sell them, and they are still brilliant. Number 17. Caul with a bacon joint. In the valleys of South Wales, caul was the Sunday dinner that needed no roast at all. A piece of bacon or ham hock simmered for hours with leeks, potatoes, swede, carrots, and cabbage in a deep pot. The broth turned smoky and rich, the vegetables soft and saturated with pork flavor. It was served in deep bowls with hunks of bread, the meat carved into the broth at the table. Caul fed mining families through the coldest winters for generations. A smoked ham hock cost a few pence in the 1950s. The vegetables came from the garden or the allotment. Today, a ham hock costs about £2 to £3. Root vegetables and leeks bring the total to around 6 for a pot that feeds 6 people with leftovers. Caul is still made in Welsh kitchens, but the tradition of building the entire Sunday around it has faded. Supermarkets pushed the roast dinner as the only proper Sunday meal, and caul retreated to the margins of memory. First pattern break. Here is something the supermarkets never told you. The cheapest roast dinner in Britain is not built around the meat at all. It is built around the dripping. Your grandmother saved every drop of fat from every roast she ever made. That dripping went into the Yorkshire pudding batter, the roast potatoes, the gravy. It flavored everything it touched. A single roast could generate enough dripping to carry flavor through 3 or 4 more meals. When we stopped saving dripping, we started spending more. We bought cooking oils. We bought gravy granules. We bought roasting sprays. An entire economy was built on replacing what was free. The dripping jar was not just thrift. It was the engine of the entire Sunday roast tradition. Without it, every meal costs more and tastes less. Number 16. Roast shin of beef on the bone. Shin was the cut the butcher practically gave away because it needed time nobody thought they had. But your grandmother had time. She would brown the shin in dripping, pack it into a deep roasting tin with onions, carrots, and a pint of stock. Then cover it tightly and roast for 4 hours at 140 degrees. The marrow inside the bone melted into the gravy. The meat fell into thick, rich shreds. Served with horseradish sauce and roast parsnips, it was a Sunday dinner that cost almost nothing and tasted like a fortune. Shin today costs about £5 a kilo. A piece big enough for a family roast runs about £6. With vegetables and a bit of stock, the whole meal is under 10. Time is the only ingredient the supermarket cannot sell you, and it is the one that makes cheap cuts taste expensive. Number 15. Roast rabbit. Before myxomatosis and before chicken became cheap, rabbit was the Sunday roast of the countryside. A whole rabbit, skinned and cleaned, would be stuffed with a forcemeat of breadcrumbs, bacon and herbs, then roasted with a layer of streaky bacon draped over the top to keep it moist. The meat was lean and delicate, somewhere between chicken and game. Roast potatoes caught the bacon dripping. Gravy was made from the pan juices and a splash of cider. A rabbit cost under £1 from the market. Today, a whole rabbit from the butcher costs about £5 to £6. With stuffing and vegetables, the roast comes in around £8 or £9 total. Rabbit vanished from the Sunday table not because of taste, but because of sentiment. Supermarkets cannot sell what people have decided is a pet rather than a protein. Number 14. Roast rolled breast of lamb. Breast of lamb was the cheapest cut on the entire animal. Fatty, bony, and magnificent when handled properly. Your grandmother would bone it out or ask the butcher to do it, spread it with a stuffing of breadcrumbs, rosemary, and lemon zest, then roll it tight and tie it with string. Roasted slowly, the fat rendered out, and the outer layer crisped while the stuffing stayed moist inside. Sliced into rounds, it looked almost elegant on the plate. In the 1960s, breast of lamb cost about 9p a pound. Today, it is often under £3 for a whole breast, making it one of the cheapest joints in the butcher's cabinet. With potatoes and greens, the full Sunday roast comes in at about £6. We stopped buying it because it requires a bit of knowledge and a bit of patience, 2 things the supermarket aisle was designed to make unnecessary. Number 13. Roast pork hock. A pork hock, roasted until the skin turned to crackling and the meat underneath collapsed into sticky, smoky shreds, was a working family's feast. Your grandmother would score the skin, rub it with salt and fennel seeds if she was feeling continental, and roast it for 3 hours. The collagen in the joint turned to gelatin, making the meat impossibly tender and the gravy thick without flour. 2 hocks fed a family of 5. In the 1950s, hocks cost almost nothing. Today they are about £2 each. 4 pounds of meat, roast potatoes, and seasonal vegetables. A full roast for under £8. The pork hock never left European kitchens. Germany still celebrates it. But British supermarkets decided it was not photogenic enough for the plastic tray. Number 12. Roast silverside. Silverside was the beef joint of the budget-conscious household. Leaner than brisket, tighter grained, and perfectly suited to slow roasting with a little liquid in the tin to keep it moist. Your grandmother would sear it on all sides, then roast it covered at 160 degrees with onions, a bay leaf, and a cup of stock. The steam inside the covered tin kept the meat tender while the outside browned. Sliced thin against the grain, it ate like a more expensive cut. Cold silverside on Monday was almost better than the hot version on Sunday. A silverside joint today costs about £7 to £8 for 1.5 kilos, enough for a family of 5, with leftovers. With Yorkshire pudding, roast potatoes, and vegetables from the market, the whole dinner stays comfortably under £10. We traded silverside for pre-packed roasting joints that cost twice as much and deliver half the flavour. Number 11. Roast stuffed cabbage. When the meat budget ran out, but Sunday still needed a centrepiece, your grandmother turned to the humble Savoy cabbage. She would blanch the outer leaves, lay them flat, and spread a stuffing of sausage meat, breadcrumbs, onion, and herbs across each one. The leaves were rolled, packed tightly into a roasting tin, and baked in stock until the cabbage turned silky and the stuffing firmed inside. The whole assembly looked like a proper roast when it came to the table. A head of cabbage cost pennies. Half a pound of sausage meat was cheap as anything. With roast potatoes alongside, it fed 4 for next to nothing. Today, the total cost is about £4 or £5. Stuffed cabbage disappeared because it required skill and because supermarkets could not shrink-wrap ingenuity. Second pattern break. Here is the truth about the £10 Sunday roast. It was never about finding the cheapest ingredient, it was about using everything. Your grandmother did not throw away potato peelings. She did not pour gravy down the sink. She did not bin the carcass or the bones. Monday's soup came from Sunday's roast. Tuesday's sandwiches came from Monday's soup meat. Wednesday's dripping toast came from Tuesday's stock making. One roast generated 3 or 4 meals. When we stopped thinking in whole weeks and started thinking in single meals, we doubled what we spent and halved what we got. The £10 roast is not a single dinner. It is the start of a week's worth of eating. That is the arithmetic the supermarkets would rather you forgot. Number 10. Roast lamb shanks. Lamb shanks were throwaway cuts in the 1960s. Too bony, too tough, too much work. Your grandmother would brown them in a hot pan, then roast them in a covered dish with onions, tinned tomatoes, and a sprig of rosemary for 3 hours. The meat slid off the bone. The sauce thickened with natural gelatin into something that clung to every mouthful. 2 shanks fed 2 adults and 2 children generously. Today, lamb shanks cost about £3 to £4 each. 2 shanks with roast potatoes and greens bring the total to about £9. Restaurants charge £18 for a single shank. Your grandmother served 2 for less than the price of a pint. Number 9. Roast gammon. A gammon joint was the roast that did triple duty. Hot on Sunday with parsley sauce and roast potatoes, cold on Monday in sandwiches, diced into Tuesday's pea soup. Your grandmother soaked it overnight to draw out the salt, then roasted it with a glaze of mustard and brown sugar for the last 30 minutes. The kitchen smelled of sweet, smoky pork. The glaze caramelized into a sticky shell that children picked at before dinner was even served. A small gammon joint today costs about £5 to £6. With vegetables and potatoes, the Sunday roast comes in at £9, and you still have 2 more meals waiting in the fridge. Gammon has not vanished entirely, but the tradition of planning 3 meals around a single joint has almost disappeared. Number 8. Roast stuffed onions. When meat was truly beyond budget, your grandmother could still put a roast on the table. Large Spanish onions, hollowed out and filled with a stuffing of breadcrumbs, cheese, sage, and a beaten egg, roasted until golden and collapsing. Served with roast potatoes, gravy made from vegetable stock, and a crumbled oxo cube, and whatever greens were in the garden. The onion turned sweet and soft around the savory stuffing. Children who would never eat a boiled onion devoured them roasted and stuffed. The whole meal cost a few pence in the 1950s. Today, it comes in at about £3 or £4 total. This is the roast that proves Sunday dinner was never really about the meat. It was about the gathering. Number 7. Roast bone marrow and beef dripping Yorkshires. This is the one the Michelin chefs borrowed. Your grandmother would roast marrow bones upright in a hot oven for 20 minutes, scoop the molten marrow onto toast with salt and parsley, and serve it as the centerpiece alongside enormous Yorkshire puddings made with beef dripping. The Yorkshires, cooked in a screaming hot tin with a tablespoon of dripping in each well, rose tall and crisp. Filled with onion gravy, they became the meal. Marrow bones cost almost nothing then, and still cost under £2 a kilo now. With flour, eggs, milk for the Yorkshires, and a few potatoes, the entire roast comes in at about £6. Food scientists have confirmed what your grandmother always knew. Bone marrow contains compounds that enhance umami perception, making everything on the plate taste more intensely savory. She did not need a laboratory. She had a roasting tin and common sense. Number 6. Roast pork cheeks. Like ox cheeks, pork cheeks were the bits the butcher swept aside. Your grandmother would slow roast them in cider with apples and onions until the small, dense muscles turned soft and sweet. 4 pork cheeks fed 2 adults comfortably, and 6 fed a family. The sauce reduced into something glossy and rich, almost like a demi-glace. With mashed potatoes and braised red cabbage, it was a Sunday roast that felt far more expensive than it was. Pork cheeks today cost about £3 to £4 a kilo. The full meal comes in well under 10. We stopped eating them because supermarkets could not be bothered to package them. The butcher still has them if you ask. Number 5. Roast beef shin pot roast. A whole piece of shin, kept on the bone, pot roasted in a covered dish with stock, red wine or stout, onions and root vegetables. 4 hours at 140 degrees. The result was halfway between a roast and a stew, the meat falling into the rich, dark gravy while the vegetables softened around it. Your grandmother served it straight from the pot at the table, ladling meat and gravy over roast potatoes. It was the roast for days when the house was cold and the family needed warming from the inside out. The total cost today sits at about £7 to £8 for a generous family portion. Number 4. Roast stuffed breast of pork. Breast of pork, like breast of lamb, was the joint for people who knew what they were doing. Your grandmother would score the skin, spread the inside with sage and onion stuffing, roll it tight, and roast it until the crackling shattered and the stuffing turned golden. The fat kept everything moist. The stuffing soaked up the pork juices. Sliced into thick rounds with roast apples and potatoes, it was a centerpiece nobody would guess cost less than a fiver. Today, pork breast is often under £4 for a whole piece. With stuffing, potatoes and greens, the family roast comes in at about £7. Number 3. Roast ham hock with root vegetables. 2 ham hocks roasted low and slow with parsnips, carrots, potatoes and a splash of cider. The skin crisped. The meat fell apart. The vegetables caught all the smoky, salty dripping and caramelized in the tin. This was the roast of northern mill towns and Welsh valleys alike, cheap, filling and deeply flavored. 2 hocks today cost about £4. Root vegetables from the market bring the total to 7. A roast that feeds 6 and still leaves enough for Monday's soup. Number 2. Roast stuffed liver. A whole piece of lamb or pig liver, scored and stuffed with sage and onion, wrapped in streaky bacon and roasted for 40 minutes. The bacon basted the liver, keeping it moist, while the stuffing balanced the richness. sliced at the table and served with onion gravy, mashed potatoes and peas. A pound of liver cost pennies in the 1950s. Today, it is about 2 to 3 pounds a kilo. The full roast comes in at about 5 or 6 pounds. Liver disappeared from the Sunday table because a generation decided it was unpleasant without ever actually trying their grandmother's version. Her version, wrapped in bacon and stuffed with sage, was nothing like the grey slabs of school dinners. Number 1. Roast stuffed beef shin with sweat dumplings. The roast that crowned more British Sunday tables than any prime rib or sirloin ever did. A thick piece of beef shin, bone-in, browned hard, then placed in a deep roasting tin with carrots, onions, and a pint of stock. Covered tightly and roasted for 4 hours at 140 degrees. In the last 45 minutes, your grandmother dropped suet dumplings into the bubbling liquor around the meat. They puffed up, golden on top, soft and savory below, soaking up the rich beef gravy. The marrow melted out of the bone. The meat surrendered to the fork. The dumplings stretched a modest piece of beef into a feast for the whole family. This was the roast that required nothing fancy, no thermometers, no timers, no gadgets. Just a heavy pot, a low oven, and the patience to let time do the work. A beef shin joint today costs about 5 to 6 pounds. Suet, flour, and root vegetables bring the total to about 9. A full Sunday roast for a family of 5, with leftovers for Monday. The supermarkets replace this with pre-packed joints that cook in an hour and taste like nothing. They sold us speed and took away flavor. They sold us convenience and took away the kitchen wisdom that made a £10 roast feed a family for half the week. Your grandmother did not need a food processor or a subscription box. She needed a sharp knife, a heavy pot, and the knowledge that cheap cuts, cooked slow, with fat and bones and dripping, produce meals that no amount of money can improve. Try one of these this week. Just one. The belly pork, the stuffed cabbage, the ham hocks with root vegetables. Then tell me in the comments if your grandmother was wrong. I already know the answer. She was not. She never was.